Hey guys, Bronze Raz MMA back with another video. Today I'm going to be going through who I think is the hardest fight for every champion in every weight division, from heavyweight all the way down to flyweight. So I'll be looking at it from a stylistic standpoint. Every champion, let's get straight into it. So this is a funny one because when I was making this list and I was choosing the heavyweight champion, I just made one for Tom Aspinall. I completely forgot John Jones is a champion. Let's be honest, Aspinall the champion. So for Tom Aspinall, I do think the hardest fight for him is John Jones. And, for some people that might not be accurate. They might go Curtis Blades because Blades has good wrestling, pretty heavy hands, like decent hands at least. Not heavy by heavyweight standards at least. But the reason why I went with John Jones is Aspinall, one of his greatest qualities is the fact that he's a heavyweight with like lightweight hand speed, right? He's a really quick boxer. He when you watch his fight with Sergey Pavlovich, I don't think he KO'd Pavlovich by sheer power. I just don't think Pavlovich saw it coming. Like he's really quick with it. Now John Jones is a light heavyweight fighter, right? He's fought at light heavyweight. He's fought these quicker guys, and so I do think that John Jones, having have fought in quicker guys rather than Curtis Blades or anybody else, gives him an advantage. On top of the fact that he has great wrestling, he also has great chin, so I think that helps him out against Tommy. But I'm just going to be honest here, I do think Aspinall still beats him anyway. So, again, and if you were to reverse it, who's the toughest fight for John Jones at heavyweight, I'm going to go Tom Aspinall. So, killing two birds with one stone, here we are. For light heavyweight, the hardest fight for Alex Pereira, in my opinion, is Alexander Rakic. Now, when people talk about the hardest fight for Pereira, they almost always look at Ankalaev. But one thing worth remembering is that Rakic has better offensive wrestling than Ankalaev. Ankalaev hardly ever wrestles, right? Rakic uses his wrestling more often than he doesn't. Now, I made a video a while ago, like, how I think Rakic does against every light heavyweight in the top 5, and I had him beating Yuri. Now, when I made that list, I did not know they were going to fight at UFC 300, where there was a $300,000 fight bonus, and Rakic would have, for one of the first times in his career, a really fun fight, and would completely ignore the wrestling and try to stand and trade with Yuri. Now, he was getting the better of Yuri for a majority of the fight, but I do think that if this fight didn't happen with that 300K bonus, Rakic would have started grappling with him, rather than staying in the pocket and trading and eventually getting knocked out. But I still think in any other scenario, Rakic beats him. But going back to Rakic, I just think he's dangerous. He's got great distance management. He's about as tall as Pereira, right? 6'4", 6'5", legitimate. Great striking. Has his own dominant leg kicks. One thing I will say, he does have a leg injury, so you're fighting a guy like Pereira who just like spams leg kicks. That is worth looking out for. But I do think Rakic gives Pereira a hard time on the feet and on the ground as well. Moving on from middleweight, we got Sean Strickland. So they already fought. It was extremely close. A lot of people felt Strickland won. Now, I'm one of those guys who thought the fight was close enough, and I actually had DDP winning. So, regardless of who you thought won, we can all agree it was a really close fight. I know some people are going to say Israel Adesanya, but, I've been thinking about how I think DDP Adesanya goes. And I really do think DDP is just going to take him down and ground and pound him in round 2 or 3. I don't think it's going to be as hard as people are making out to be. I could be wrong. This might age pretty badly, but I do think Strickland is a tougher fight for DDP. Great defensive boxing for a guy like Dricus, who just runs in with those heavy hands. Strickland's a hard guy to hit, and he has a great pace. 5 rounds, so he's just a tricky fight for pretty much everybody in the division, and I think especially so for Dricus du Plessis. Moving on, we're going to welterweight. When I originally made this list, I was going to go with JDM actually, but I ended up going with Shavkat for the simple reason that Leon Edwards he's pretty much the jack of all trades, master of none, right? Like, he's got good wrestling, he's got good offensive wrestling, good offensive striking, good defensive striking. But he's not like considered a master of any one thing. He's just good everywhere. So to beat him, You need a guy who's good everywhere, and that's Shavkat in the welterweight division. Shavkat's good pretty much everywhere, and so this fight is one of those fights that I think Leon would struggle with because anything he tries to do, Shavkat could match him. On top of the fact that Shavkat is a machine when it comes to finishes, he does have like zero head movement, so he very well could get caught by like a head kick, sometime in the fight, which kind of scares me. But I do think Edwards and Shavkat are like the same height. Maybe Edwards is maybe a bit smaller, so maybe the head kick won't be as readily available. But Shavkat is a dangerous man who's good everywhere. And the difference between him and Leon, where Leon's maybe a bit more smart, more technical, Shavkat's got power. And so I do think that would be a tough fight for Leon Edwards. Moving on for lightweight. To me, this was a pretty obvious choice, Arman. He's already given Islam a tough fight on short notice, and that was when, Arman was still relatively new. That might have been his first or second fight in the UFC, actually. And he did extremely well. Since then, he's gotten better and better. His wrestling has improved offensively and defensively. Great defensive wrestling. He's had power on his feet. He showed that in his fight with Beneil Dariush. And he has an interesting moveset, in his fight with Charles Oliveira. Throwing axe kicks, and just in general with Beneil, he went with that knee up the middle, followed by I can't remember if it was a hook or an overhand. Either way, he's throwing combinations. He's got great flexibility, fantastic wrestling, and I think he gives Islam a lot of problems now. I do think Makhachev's a better striker in general, and I think he's a better grappler. But you never know. Arman's just improved so much, and I do think he would give Makhachev a tough challenge out of anybody in the lightweight division. Moving on for featherweight, I'm going with Yair Rodriguez. So I know Max Holloway is sort of the guy that everybody's looking at. I'm going with Ilya. I think Ilya beats Holloway. I might make a video on that later when the fight eventually gets announced. It hasn't been yet. I think Topuria beats him. Holloway doesn't do too well with shorter opponents. Yair Rodriguez, though. Yair, his stock has dropped now that he's lost to Ortega, but you guys got to remember, he was piecing him up on the feet. He was piecing up Josh Emmett on the feet. Did he get caught a few times? Sure. Even against Volkanovski. Piecing him up, I wouldn't say piecing him up, but he was landing some good shots, and there was that head clash, and then Yair was a bit hurt, and then immediately afterwards he got hurt further, and then he lost the fight. But either way, when he's on the feet, he had Max Holloway shooting takedowns. Like, that's how good Yair is. The head kick is there, for to land on Ilya. We've already seen that. Yair, anytime he's in a striking fight with somebody, he makes it very difficult for them. He's so unorthodox, tough match for anybody. Ilya has great defensive wrestling, but he doesn't show his offensive wrestling too much. I would be interested if Yair forces him to start throwing in some takedowns. Oops. With that also said, I do think Topuria has great boxing, so it'd be kind of like the boxing of Topuria versus the taekwondo of Yair Rodriguez. I'd still probably go with Ilya, but I do think Yair is, out of everybody, the toughest fight for him at featherweight. Moving on for bantamweight, I'm going to go with Petr Yan as the toughest fight for Sean O'Malley. So this is an interesting one. I think a lot of people are going to go Merab. My thing with Merab is he's a great wrestler, but his stand-up is so bad. I mean, it's just really, really bad. I've never been impressed with him on the feet. And the thing with O'Malley is I really do think O'Malley is going to have a well-timed up knee up the middle, and he's going to knock Merab out. I just see him beating Merab. I still think it's a tough fight because Merab just... I'm sorry, my hair keeps getting in my eye. Merab's just a tough fight for pretty much anybody in the division. But when it comes to his hardest fight, I still think it's Petr Yan because Petr Yan is good everywhere. He can hang with O'Malley in the striking, and he's better than O'Malley in the grappling. The first fight was super close as it was. A lot of people thought Petr Yan won, including myself. If you rewatch the fight, it's a lot closer than I think a lot of people had it. With that being said, I think Yan is just tough, just stylistically tough. I know he lost to Merab, but MMA math doesn't work that way. And I really do think that O'Malley would piece Merab up on the feet as long as he can keep it standing. And that's a big if, but he did so against Aljamain, so you never know. I just think stylistically, the machine Petr Yan is a tough fight for O'Malley. Now we're going to end it off with Flyweight. I don't really have much to say about Flyweight because I didn't really know who to put here. I ended up going with Manel Kape. And the simple reason he has an 80% takedown defense, and Pantoja loves spamming takedowns. And Urseg has a 60% takedown defense, but he arguably beat Pantoja in their fight. And I think Cap is just as good of a striker, but has an 80% takedown defense. That's my only real reason for going with Cap. I'd still probably go with Pantoja, just because he spams takedowns and he gets them. And I think Pantoja is really good in general. But yeah, I think Cap, you could put Usyk up here as well because of the fight they just had. But those two, but I'm going to go with Manel Cap just because he has a higher takedown defense. So yeah, there you have it. Those are the hardest fights in every weight division here in the UFC. Hope you guys like my list. If you didn't, let me know what you agree with, what you don't agree with, what you would change, what you would keep. Let me know all of that in the comment section below. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.